Hi guys, James at RampantLionReviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we're going to head over to Germany once again, and this is another one of the numerous little microbreweries that have been opening up in Munich. So for this one we're going to go to Hopfmeister for the first time, and we're having a taste of the Gipfel Glück. So this one is a 5.2% Weizen beer, and the name translates roughly to mountain happiness, so should be quite a nice one. And this was another one of the beers that I got from, I believe, Getränke when I was in Munich a few weeks ago. So really interested to see what this one's like, and all of the beers that have been recommended by that shop have been pretty damn awesome. So I'll put the link to their Facebook page in the description below, and do make sure you check them out if you find yourself in Munich. And there's some really good German craft beers these days. It's very interesting time over there just now, because the German brewers, who obviously are very skilled, are starting to try their hand at some of these more kind of American beer styles. This one is one of the more German ones, of course, a Hefeweizen, but some of the IPAs and things like that are coming out of Germany now are really top class. So have a go with some of these new wave German craft beers. But anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that hopefully I can do in the future from Hopfmeister. Very first time I'm trying one of their beers. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the home page and search for beer based on country, city, state, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlist of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the German beers that I've reviewed for you, and that's constantly being added to. And as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you give the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, just to tell you a little bit about Hopfmeister, there really wasn't too much information available on this brewery, but basically Hopfmeister was founded by Mark Gallo, who's a trained sommelier and a highly enthusiastic sportsman. I think he was doing skiing, surfing, snowboarding, all of these kind of things, but he's well versed in a lot of different kind of more extreme sports, I guess you would say. But his main job is actually as a graphic designer, and he created most of these beers with his friends who were quite well trained in the brewing industry and had a lot of experience. I believe a number of these beers are brewed at various different places around the city, of course, but the first of them were produced in 2015, and as I mentioned to you, they are based in the city of Munich. But it was actually quite difficult to find information on this brewery. I think they're brewed, as I said to you, I think the beers are brewed in a number of different places with the idea of eventually opening up their own place. But as I say, he's a trained sommelier as well. So these beers are kind of designed to what he would consider to be very good beers. So really interested to see how it turns out, but that's all the information I actually had on this brewery. But I'll put their Facebook page and everything like that for you in the description below, and you can check out their things if you get the chance, and hopefully I can return to Hopfmeister at some point in the near future, and hopefully by then I can find some more information about Doug Gallo and things like that. There were only a few articles on Hopfenhelden and things like that, so that Hopfenhelden incidentally is a very good resource if you want to find out about German craft beer, a really nice kind of journalist site. But anyway, let's get on to the tasting section of this beer itself. So as I mentioned to you at the start of the video, this one is a 5.2% Weizen. It's hopped with Amarillo, Cascade, Mosaic of course as well, and the Hallertau Magnum hop of course from Bavaria, and the name, as I mentioned, translates to the mountain happiness. So should be a really interesting one. I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork then before we open up. Quite tasteful artwork, I have to say, on this beer. I'm a bit of a fan of that. It's a 33 centilitre bottle. You can see on the back there, fan flash, so you can return this in Germany. I do like the top label on this with those fruits. It looks really nice. But this beer is described as being an exotic Weizen, exotische Weiss, basically exotic wheat beer, this one. And it says you should get some banana and mangoes and things, which again is what you'd expect from this style. But without further ado, let's get it out and we'll get on with the tasting. Plain bottle cap on this one incidentally. So let's get stuck in. Nice smoky opening there, and we'll get it out and into the glass. Give it a wee bit of an aggressive pour. You always want a Weizen beer to have a nice little bit of head on it, of course, and I think generally German beer, you do want to have a little bit of a head on it. It's kind of sacrilege in Germany if you don't get a head, but as you can see with this one, we've got a nice solid finger of a frothy white head. It's perfect white. It's not even got a little creamy tinge to it. I would definitely go with perfect white from that one. You can really get some of these nice kind of banana bready, yeasty esters coming off this, which again is what you'd expect of the Weizen style. So this one actually has quite a nice orange tint to it. It's that bright kind of yellowy orange colour that you would expect. If I put my fingers behind the glass, you can see it's not really transparent. It's a little bit clearer than some Weizens that I've come across incidentally. But it does have a little bit of clarity, but it has that haziness that you do expect from the style. There's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and quite a few just going up towards the bottom of that head there, and you can see the head has just gone down to a half finger there as the beer is settled a little bit. But let's take a closer look at the aroma then and see how we get on. Yeah, you know, it actually smells like a very straight up German Weizen. And that was one thing I always loved about the German Weizen style. So it's got this very, very distinct malt base. So from this one, you get that nice kind of white bready character. On top of that, of course, you get the wheat, which I always find German wheat has this little bit of sweet character to it. It's always really interesting because you don't get the same from the Belgian wit beers or anything like that. German wheat beers always just have a really beautiful, beautiful aroma. And you can smell that nice wheaty character coming out of this one. There's a little bit of a clovey spice to it. You can pick up the bananas, of course, like I was saying. A lot of people describe the aromas of the aromas and the taste of these Weizen beers as like bubblegum, and you can get a little bit of that. If you just get ordinary bubblegum rather than the flavoured stuff, you can. It is actually quite a good descriptor for a Weizen beer. But with this one, you can smell a little bit of the more American hops. You can get a wee bit of the tangerines, which is coming from the Mosaic, of course. You get a bit of the richer orange, which is the Amarillo, really. And there's a good bit of kind of floral aromaticity to the beer as well. The American hops generally tend to be higher in alpha acids and things, so you get some really nice sort of spicy floral aromaticity out of this beer. Although more than anything, I would say this one, just by the aroma, it does smell a little bit more juicy. It is brewed in accordance with the Reinheitsgebot as far as I know, so it won't have any fruits or anything like that added to it. But you will get some really nice fruits out of these American hops. The Cascade, of course, is the kind of classic American hop. It's got a nice sort of slightly grapefruity note to it. But when you stir this beer up a little bit, you get that nice kind of spicy floral aromaticity. But at the same time, you can pick up some of the typical German noble elements. It's got a little bit of that almost lemongrassy quality to it that you expect in things like the Hallertau. The Magnum, from my experience, always just has a little bit more of a slightly spicy floral note, but you don't get too much of that in this. And I think maybe the other hops, the fruitiness from those hops and the kind of banana yeasty esters from this is sort of kind of suppressing that aspect of the aroma a little bit. So really the aroma in this one, it's got that typical kind of malt base you expect from a Weizen, but it's got these more juicy American hop fruity notes. So yeah, it's a really interesting one. As I always say, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of the beer before you have a taste of it. It's always half the experience when it comes to whiskey, sake and craft beer and stuff like this. But without further ado, let's get stuck into this one. So this is the Gipfel Glück, the Mountain Happiness from Hopfmeister, one of the little microbreweries, one of the many microbreweries that are popping up in Munich in Bavaria and Germany. Let's get stuck in. Prost. Yeah, I have to say, that's pretty nice. The first impression I have of this beer is that it's intended to be one of these kind of nice, easy drinking ones. I always found, before I went over to Germany, I absolutely loved the wheat beers, and then I went over and had some of the Brauhaus ones, and I learned very quickly that the Weizen beers for me, it's quite difficult to session them. When I went over to Germany, I really got into the Dunkels and the Helles more because you could session those beers. The Weizen beers for me now are more of a taster. You have one every so often because they do make you feel quite full. This one to me is a little bit lighter and a bit more drinkable than some of the other ones that I've come across in Germany, and they're great. Don't get me wrong, the German Weizens are absolutely great, but for me, I can only really drink one of them at a time. This one to me just feels a little bit lighter and a bit more kind of sessionable, if that makes sense. But it's a nice beer. It's very different from a kind of traditional German Weizen. I'd say that straight away, but that of course is what you expect with these American hops. But yeah, in the middle of your palate then, you've got that nice kind of smooth white bready base. On top of that, you can pick up some of the slightly more thick, wheaty aspects of the beer, and right in the centre of your palate, you get these nice kind of banana sort of bubblegummy flavours. It really, in the flavour more than the aroma, you do get those nice bubblegummy notes, and you can feel there's a little bit of that kind of clovey spice coming out of it as you progress further and further into the aftertaste. There is a little element of spicy character to this beer as you go further on with it. It's a really quite nice one. This has got a little bit of hoppy bitterness as well, which is it's quite interesting, because I've always found the German Weizens, some of them do have a really nice hoppy character to them, but a lot of them are just quite smooth and quite thick beers. But I like how this one comes across, because initially you can pick up that, I would be guessing with this one that in the brewing process they'd use the Magnum as the bittering hop, and then the American hops would be added a little bit later on for flavour and aroma and things like that, maybe in the last half hour of the brew, and obviously in dry hopping and things like that as well. But I like how you can get that typical, that German noble hoppy character. Like in the back corners of the palate, you can pick up just a tiny little bit of that slightly sweet earthiness, and as you come further forward, you can feel that nice, slightly floral, aromatic character. And around the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit more kind of lemongrassy, that slightly lemongrass citrus note. But then as you get further and further into the aftertaste, you start to pick out these juicy American fruits from the Cascade, the Amarillo and the Mosaic. It's a really interesting beer, this one. But yeah, I do like how that comes across. With this one, just if you go behind the front curve of the palate, that's where you'll get this little oily bubble where these nice kind of juicy fruity esters come out. There is quite a bit of orange in this one, and with Mosaic and Amarillo present, you should expect that. So the Amarillo will give you a slightly more orangey, straight up orange, where the oily straight up orange I think is a good way to describe it, whereas the Mosaic will give you a lighter kind of tangerine note, and you'll start to get a little bit of these kind of tropical fruits and things like that. And I always found you get a little bit of almost pineapple, papaya kind of thing, and you can detect that as you go further into the aftertaste. The Amarillo, like I say, is a more straight up orange flavour. The Cascade in this one, it usually gives you a bit of a kind of grapefruity note, but I'm not getting too much of that. You can feel there's a little bit of that slightly darker flavour that you get from grapefruit underneath that, but this one for me is leaning a little bit more towards the oranges, and you are getting a little bit of almost pineapple, kind of pineapple papaya sort of thing from the Mosaic as you progress further into the flavour of this one. So it's a really interesting beer. I think a good way to summarise this one is that it's like a German Weizen that has that traditional malt base. You can detect the Hallertau hops in this one, the Magnum. You can pick that up in this beer straight away, but then as you progress further into the aftertaste, you get these complexities that are more akin to the American craft beer. So it's a really interesting thing, and this is what's quite exciting actually about the German craft beer scene, because they're playing around with the traditional styles in Germany and adding these new American hops and different malts and things like that. So it's a very, very exciting time for the craft beer industry over there. This beer itself, is it the best Weizen I've ever had? Not really, but it's a one that's quite interesting, and it does taste your palate. And as a beer reviewer, as a beer tuber or whatever, you do want things that are going to be quite interesting. And like I say, craft beer is all about experimentation, and you can see what Doug Gallo's going for with this one. It's a really interesting beer. But yeah, I have to say I do like this one. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. I'd love to try it on tap actually. I think it would be a really, really interesting beer to try on tap, because it's got those, as I say, it's got those traditional elements that you expect of the Weizen. It's a little bit more sessionable in terms of the mouthfeel and stuff like that, but then as you go further into the aftertaste, you start to get these nice American hop flavours. I think that's a good way to summarise this beer. In terms of the mouthfeel then, I'd say this one's mid-bodied. I think it's a little bit lighter than some of the other Weizens I've had from Germany. As I mentioned, carbonation on this one's moderate. It does have a little bit of a prickle to it. The overall mouthfeel is a little bit more oily, I would say. It does have a bit of wetness. It's a little bit lighter in the body than the traditional Weizens. There's a good bit of hoppy bitterness. It's not going to blow your head off in terms of IBUs right enough. There's some juicy fruity character in there. You've got that typical sweetness that you expect from a German Weizen. The malt base in this one is really, really quite nice. It's just a little bit lighter, of course, than some of the traditional Weizens like Wein, Stefan and Schneider Weiss and things like that. So this beer is just that little bit more sessionable. It is I think it's fair to say this is a sort of craft take on the traditional German Weizen style. It sounds a very kind of corny and sort of let down way to summarise this beer, but it really is that. You get these nice American kind of hop flavours in the aftertaste of this. So yeah, a thumbs up to Hopfmeister for this one. So hopefully I can try some of their other beers. This is a really interesting one, and I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink it again. So hopefully I can go back to Munich and try this one on tap or something like that at some point in the future. But if you get the chance to try it, I recommend that you do, particularly obviously if you are a fan of the German Weizen. A really nice American hopped German Weizen beer this. So yeah, until the next time, thank you for watching my beer reviews. If you have enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Hopfmeister as well, and hopefully I can get back out to Munich at some point and try some more of these beers. But a really interesting one, and I hope you guys can try it for yourself. So once again, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Gipfel Glück, the Mountain Happiness from Hopfmeister, one of the numerous little microbreweries opening up in Munich. Until the next time, it's Slange just now, and I will catch you guys very soon. Prost.